We are live. Hey, you guys. It's Lisa Alexander, founder and executive director of Stand Up Survivor. Come on in here. I'm sorry we're late. We had technical difficulties, but we are here because we know that we have content that somebody needs to see. You guys know how I feel about the fact that domestic violence is life or death, and we know that taking the time to air this broadcast has the opportunity to save someone's life, your life, a teen's life, someone you know and love. So come on in here. When you come on in, please let us know where you are tuning in from and say, hey. I'm going to give you guys a moment to pop in. I know I'm a little late, but that's okay. So come on in. And when you get in here, I'm going to introduce our guest to you tonight. And we're excited to dig in. This is some good content. So I want to make sure that we get some good information to you. So tonight's guest is Shannon Morrell. And she is the executive director, founder, CEO, all that, of Legacy Life Counseling and Consultant in San Diego, California. Hey, Shannon.
Hey there. Hey.
So glad that you were able to join us. We pushed past technical difficulties and here we are. Hey, John. Thank you so much. Go ahead and watch the replay whenever you get a chance. Thanks for popping on to say hey. Hey, you guys from Kentucky, come on in here. Listen, tonight we're talking about teen dating violence. Because February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. And I hope that the statistic shocks you, right? Because it is shocking. 1 in 3 women experience domestic violence, but also 1 in 3 teens, 1 in 3 youth. That's outrageous, Shannon. I'm just going to be extra about it. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's just outrageous to think that women and teens are dealing with the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. It is. And it actually says that 1.5 million teens, when they polled them, admitted to being in some type of abusive or unhealthy relationship before the age of 18. So you're absolutely right.
Over a million and a half experience dating violence. That's huge. But I'm just going to start it off because I feel like starting something tonight, But what about those parents that said their kid isn't dating, right? So my kid's not dating, but let me just give you a stat before you answer that, right? My kid's not dating. I have rules in my house. They don't date. I'm one of them. I have rules in my house. But 72%, 72% of 13 and 14-year-olds are dating. I didn't make that statistic up, right?
Absolutely. They are dating. And here's the thing, though, because when the parents put that limitation of my kids don't date, well, the kids go, okay, I'm not going to date. So they're not going to title it dating. They're going to, like someone, or they have an interest in someone, or we're friends. And so when we put that idea out there, well, my kids aren't going to date, and you close that door, what we're doing is closing that door truly on the communication. That if our teen, because you think about it, that age is a time where, those are those years we're learning relationships, we're learning what we like, what we don't like, who we're interested in. And so there is that time frame. And so we have to have at least a crack in that door for when we put my kid don't date and you close it, then that limits them being able to come to you if something comes up.
Because they're going to do it behind your back. I was 13 or 14 at one point. They said don't date. I was like, oh, okay, but I like Johnny. So what do I do? So basically, if you're going to say don't date, leave that crack is what you're saying is welcome that crack. If you do like someone, I'd like you to come talk to me about it.
Right.
Because the thing is, when things are happening in the dark, in secret, stuff can fester. Things can happen there. So even if your child is not dating, but they're dating and something's going down on the low, guess what? You're not going to know. They're not going to say, hey, Johnny's hitting me. Maria's, stalking me. They're not going to say it because you told them they can't.
Absolutely. And that's truly what it is the secrecy, is exactly what you said, because what we do is when we put that there. And so I think it starts with truly setting those boundaries with your teens, but always going, hey, but if you are interested, come talk to me. Let's talk about this, because we can communicate on what you're trying to do in the first place. And, I shared with you a while ago, I have 3 teenage boys, 18, 16, and 15. And that was truly what we said. We don't want you dating right now. And we said, why? Focus on school, your sports. We gave them scenarios. But at the end of the day, one of them did start dating, right? But when he did, he came to us to talk to us about it. And it was because we had that open communication in the sense, well, are you interested? And I even check in, go, are you interested in someone? They're like, no, mom, stop asking me.
Yeah. But you know what's funny too? Like, well, hey, Teresa, hey, yeah, girl, this is so important. It's so I remember when I was married and my mom said to me, is he hitting you? Is my husband hitting me? And of course, my answer was no, mom, of course. Come on.
Right?
Meanwhile, he was beating me down, but I said no.
Right.
So that no answer doesn't necessarily mean no. So we have to be, I love how you talk about leaving that door open, because we want you to focus on your grades and not get involved emotionally with somebody. But 72%
right.
of 13 and 14 year olds, I'm just gonna repeat it for those who just popping in, 72% of 13 and 14 year olds are dating. So if that's the case, we're here to give you some information about teen dating violence, ways you can talk to your child about dating violence, and ways that if you are in an abusive relationship, a lot of people here are survivors. How does that abuse in the home affect your child? Right? So it's really, really important. So I'm going to give you just a couple stats, because statistics are important. Yes. 25% of high school girls have been physically or sexually abused. 25%. 20. I mean, that's huge. And one of the biggest numbers are ages 16 to 24, right? Really big range. They are 3 times more likely than the rest of the entire population to be abused between the ages of 16 and 24. Shannon, you remember yourself as 16, right? Or even 24, because we passed that. But the lot of hormones are going. We're trying to figure out who we are, you know? We're attracted. Yeah, we're attracted to so many different things and people and trying to find ourselves.
Absolutely. I mean, that age bracket too is a time where, you know, especially here in our culture in the United States, we do this thing where someone turns 18 and we go, okay, you're grown, you're an adult, I'm not responsible for you anymore. But the years that our adult or, you know, young adult people need us the most is that time. That's when relationships are developed. You're selecting careers, the person you're going to want to be with, the schools. And so they really need their parents or guardians or people in their life to mentor them. And that is exactly why when we push them into that age group where they're actually easy prey in a sense, you know, they go off to college, they go into different environments, meeting different people. And especially if there were restrictions on them in high school that they couldn't date, and it was and then they're kind of out on their own. So it opens that door to where they're limited in just understanding relationships, you know, and so yeah.
I like how you talk about that, because that conversation is necessary. And, you know, my parents didn't have the big conversation with me. You know, we were kind of, you know, culturally, you're kind of just out there figuring it out on your own. But we encourage parents today. Listen, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have everything so accessible to us. I remember I was subbing for this one class over 10, 12 years ago. And the teacher told me, hey, watch out for little Johnny, because he watches porn on his phone, right? Yeah, 3rd grade. The thing is, we didn't have that option. Everything at their fingertips. And so it's really important that we have the conversation, no matter how uncomfortable our children feel. It's important. So let's skip ahead. Tell us a little bit about your story. Why are you passionate about domestic violence?
I grew up in domestic violence. That's all I've known. Growing up in an environment where, you know, my father was an alcoholic. There was a lot of religious restrictions as well that put, you know, some confusion into my mom in staying in that abusive relationship as well. So she was being abused. It started off emotional abuse, went into physical abuse. And, you know, us being young watching this, you're constantly in trauma and that high stress. You don't know what's going to happen in your home and in your environment. And so from that, growing up as a young girl, I'm like, this cannot be right. But what I also saw is, because I have 5 brothers, they all became abusers, even in their teen years, how they interacted with women, even how they treated us as their sisters, because there's 4 girls as well. And so how they talked to us, how they disrespected us, how they put us down. And so I'm like, this cannot be right. And so
I just want to stop real quick, because I think that is so profound. You grew up in a house within an abusive house. You saw an abusive marriage, and all 5 of your brothers became abusers, even as teenagers.
Absolutely. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go.
And the range of it, you know, it all looks different, but it starts, you know, I had a couple who were more physical. I had to actually call the cops on one of my brothers in California while he's in Louisiana, and I'm hearing this over the phone. And his excuse was, well, she took my phone. She should have never looked through my phone. And, you know, and I'm like, no, that's not okay. And then from just plain disrespect with the words or how they treated the young lady and so this is not okay behavior. So it was learned. My brothers, that's all they saw. That's what they saw. Relationship is, I can treat people this way. I can talk to women this way. I could disrespect women this way. And I even saw some of that disrespect go to my mom. In a sense, from my brothers as well, where they learned to manipulate They learned to use her. They would take her kindness of her trying to help them and manipulate it into taking her car, or, all of these things. And so it was just this cycle of abuse. And it went from, whatever the generations even before that, you just see it continue. And there was a point that when you're in these environments, it's learned behavior. And so growing up, I'm like, this is just the feeling of feeling lost, feeling like no one cared. And so there was something in me. I had to remove myself from that environment. So I did use the military to do that. I went to the military to remove myself from that environment. But you're absolutely right. I mean, it is a cycle. And when you grow up in it, truly, because when we look at the statistics and data, it is a learned behavior. That is the first thing that is discussed and talked about. And then we normalize it. And so that's why you can go in these different environments and it becomes normal. This is normal. I talk to my wife this way or my husband this way. It's normal that I push and shove and all of those behaviors.
And that's why it's so important to break the cycle. And the person that has the power to break that cycle is the victim, is the victim survivor. It's just a fact. Is it easy? No. But is it possible? Yes. And it's empowering and powerful, and you can do it because, as Shannon shared, growing up in it, they have the opportunity to redo the cycle. Go. I have a 2-year-old child. My son was 2. His father, my ex-husband, was my abuser. He saw his father abuse his mother. And so the cycle continued. And I had to decide for myself, I couldn't allow it broke my heart. I was like, I can't have my son talk to women like that, treat women like that, punch women like that. It couldn't be. So somebody has to break the cycle. So if you're listening and you're wondering if your children are impacted at all by domestic violence, they are, whether they see it, hear it, see your tears at the end of it. Safety plan, get connected with someone that can help you with safety, because as you can see, it started in teenage years and it went up. But I want to touch on 2 things you said. You said spiritually, your faith, the spiritual aspect of your house was very strong. So spiritually, your mom stayed longer stayed in the relationship because of the spiritual restraints.
Right. And I would say more religious restraints, right?
Religious,
yeah, of course, because, in some faith and religions, we take doctrine and people truly use it as a crutch, as a way to control and have power over individuals. And so the simple phrase of, women being submissive, right? And truly that's, if you understand it, it's not the way that we as people have interpreted that, where a woman has to stay in a marriage and be abused. And because, and walk through all of these things. And, the thing that bothered me the most is when they told my mom, well, did you pray? And I'm like, it's not my mom. Go to him. Correct.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. Roll my eyes on camera.
I saw that.
Sorry. Yeah, because it's the worst question. Like, what is that? Pray and don't even. Okay, sorry.
You blame the victim, right? For the abuser's behavior. And, so it's one of those things where if we're not careful, we have to understand truly where abuse can be in a lot of places. We do see it in churches and we do see it in religious areas of women being submissive. And submissive means, to me, how it's interpreted is truly being a doormat, like don't have a voice, don't speak up.
And that's not what the verse means at all.
Absolutely.
And religion has twisted it. The individual have twisted it to mean that way. And the whole stay and pray, go back and stay. Listen, it can cause women to get killed, and it has. So let's definitely skip the whole stay and pray thing. Have you prayed about it? You can't change his behavior. I'll repeat it again, his or her. You can't change the abuser's behavior. Another thing I want to touch on really quickly, because we get a lot of it's usually the female victim mothers who said that their child in turn abuses them. Right. And so that's a really powerful statement when you talked about how your brothers would turn around and manipulate your mother, and show signs of abuse towards her because that's what they saw.
Right. Oh, yeah. It's almost seeing her, because one of the things, and, I saw my mom and I got to such a point of frustration and anger with her because I saw her as like, she can protect us. My dad was an alcoholic, and I don't excuse his behavior at all, because I saw him when he wasn't an alcoholic. And even in the midst of his alcoholism or his episodes, I saw him be kind and nice to people. You know what I'm saying? So it was truly against us, his family, that he was really aggressive. And so with, my mom, it was just, I got to a point where I was so disappointed in her that it's almost like you start to look down on that person. Like, come on, mom, you could do better than this. Where in a sense, that's abusive as well. But she would stay. And every time, we'd get away and go somewhere new, she would stay. And so that anger or bring us back. And so it wasn't that we didn't have places to go. It was she would come back because he would promise her things. We know the honeymoon, the hearts and flowers, the promises and everything. But he never did anything. He never went to any classes. He never asked for help. He never did any of those things. And so that time gap of her being separated from him made her forget the abusive part and remember the hopeful things. So as a teenager, I was just really angry and frustrated. And, I just, even interacting with boys myself, liking them, I had such a, I used to be like, oh, you want too much. And I'm like, no, I'm just not going to tolerate any of this type of treatment. I am not. And the thing I used to say, I'm not going to be my mom, which is actually, it's not healthy because, we get to such a place of that, even as a teenager, where I was very rigid. And I guess that did keep me safe in a sense because I didn't allow people to abuse me or treat me poorly. But as you grow up into adulthood, out of that, it can be actually not healthy at all that you're kind of so cold and so rigid to keep yourself safe.
Somebody said in the comments that girls can be abusive too, and that's absolutely true.
Yes,
they absolutely can. There are female abusers, absolutely, and we don't minimize that in the least bit. That's statistically true. So let's talk a little. I'm sorry, go, Shannon.
No, and I think because statistically, even with males, men don't come forward as much. We also see there's no room for young men to come forward to say, hey, because truly, in a sense, they don't know what the abuse really is. And it looks different sometimes, and the power dynamics, we understand this even in, adult intimate abuse is that, a girl hits you in the face, like, oh, that didn't hurt, and we laugh it off. But truly, it's like, no, she shouldn't be hitting you in your face. She shouldn't be touching you that way. So the impact may not be as forceful or aggressive, but it still should not be happening. And so I don't think we've even set up forums for boys or even educated to young men on what this is. So the data truly doesn't show as much of boys coming forward, just as much as we see men who don't come forward. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Let's chat about that for a second. So let's talk about the different signs of abuse that you'll see in a teen dating violence situation.
Yeah. So of course we go right to the physical. I think people know that one pretty well, and they're putting their hands on each other. But you'll often see with teens the grabbing by the arm. Like you're in the hall, grabbing the arm, grabbing the face, like pay attention to me, look at me, pinching, stuff like that. Holding the person really forcefully, so they don't walk away from you in front of their friends. So it could look a little different because we see a lot of these things are happening at the schools or in environments where actually there are other people, right? At parties and stuff of that nature. And then of course, breaking cell phones, or breaking things that the person bought, ripping up shirts. So that physical piece comes in quite a bit. Then of course there's the emotional, where the manipulation, using things against that person. The secrecy, I cannot touch on that enough. The secret photos I sent to you, they're manipulating that person into sending pictures. Well, you said you loved me. You said you cared about me. Send me those pictures, because one thing I think we don't understand when it comes to teen dating violence, there is a lot of dating over social media where these kids actually will never see each other face to face, right? And so these kids can meet someone in a chat group and they go, oh, we're going to date. And they can date for 2 or 3 years, someone who's in 2 counties or 2, 3 location far away, and they date over social media. And so they date over social media. It's a lot of sending inappropriate photos. And that could be, with someone they're with, but you see that as well. And then,
so let me touch on something before you go any further. I want to go back because even, I used to teach in high school, teach in middle school, and I saw it all the time with the grabbing or holding them by both shoulders.
Right.
So it may look a little different because they're teenagers, but it's definitely something to keep an eye out on. Or we're slap boxing, they're slapping each other. The girl slaps the boy. Stuff is it's not appropriate in any way, shape, or form, and it needs to be nipped in the bud immediately. Even educators, if you're seeing this in the hallways when you're working, guidance counselors, parents, if you're seeing this in the dynamic of a relationship, it's very, very important to nip that stuff in the bud.
Absolutely.
One of the things you went on to, of course, again, we're in a different age where social media is everything. They have internet, they have access. Let me tell you something. Even if you don't have internet, there's all these games that you can go on and send videos and pictures. It's crazy.
Right.
And so there's a lot of, I'm going to touch on sexting, first of all. Sending naked pictures or videos is really, really big within the teen dating.
It is. It absolutely.
And that can oftentimes be used in an abusive way. Well, if you don't, I'm going to send it out. If you don't, I'm going to share it with everybody.
Absolutely. And that happens so much. And so think about this. The idea behind that is to keep doing it as well. And so that person is trapped in that. And can you imagine being 14 years old, going to your parent going, hey, this is what this person's doing to me. They're manipulating. No, they don't do it.
Oh, I sent him a picture of my boobs, but he's threatening. They're not going to tell you that. And so there's got to be something that parents can do to keep it, not only just keep that line of communication on, but try to educate before it gets to that point.
Absolutely. And understanding that, truly sexting, once it starts getting the pictures, it's pornography, it's child pornography. So educating, that was part of the trainings we've talked about as well, is that if you start moving pictures around of a person under, a specific ages, depending on the state, some of it could be 16, some could be 18, but that's child pornography. And if there's some chain of you being involved in that, you can be charged criminally for that. And there's a lot of areas cracking down on it big time. And so just even that bit of education, and that should, and it's
have the conversation.
Absolutely. You
have the conversation about it. Yeah. No one should be asking you for pictures of absolutely anything with no clothes on. I went to, before pre-COVID, did some trainings in some schools, and I was in a middle school, and I went to do a training on domestic violence, and the 6th grader comes up to me and she goes, she's like, Miss, I'm so glad you're here. And I'm like, oh, thank you, honey. She's like, because my boyfriend choked me at lunch today. Oh. And I was just like floored. And I said, well, okay. Well, why did he do that? She said, well, because I told everybody that we were dating, and he didn't want everybody to know that we were dating. 6th grade. Right. He choked her at lunch. And it was like, she didn't even register in her head before I came that was not okay.
Absolutely. And you know what? You use that. I'm glad you said that, because what we do is you think of the word choking in itself. I even go, no, sweetheart, that was strangulation. So they can know, like, we minimize things down so much. And it's like, no, that's not what it was. That's not
strangled you.
Absolutely. And so
it's devastating. You got to have the conversation. She walked it up. She told me, but did she go home and tell her parents or guardians that happened to her? Do they even know she's dating? We're talking about 16 years, 6th grade. Yeah. And so another thing you talked about was with the dating via social media. So I want parents to know, and especially during this age of COVID, kids are not leaving their house. They're not going to school. There are people online that are just targeting this age group, and being able to control them without even seeing them face to face.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so real. And if you're a parent, it's like you have to get up to date on the apps, on these secret apps, on all of these things. And my heart for parents, and myself being a parent, is truly having a dialogue. And if it's uncomfortable, then you're in the right place, right?
I like that.
You're going to the right place with those kids, because one, if you are uncomfortable, but you could you talk about it, you calm, and be ready to hear anything, because I cannot tell you the things my boys tell me. And I'm so blessed. They're 18, 16, 15, because we've left those doors of communication open. And sometimes like, oh my God, you're telling me way too much. And I mean, they want to tell me a lot. And so, but you have to be definitely open to hear it, normalize it to you. And if you have to walk away and talk to your spouse or someone else, like, oh my God, I can't believe, but you don't want to look shocked when your kids are talking to you, because what they want to protect you. So they shut down and they go, oh, you know what? And they'll minimize. And so we have to be ready to hear what our kids want to say to us. Even if you ask one time, ask again. As parents, I mean, a lot of times we have intuition. If we're paying attention even a little, like, this isn't right. Something's not right. If you see a change in your child's behaviors, even here's another one. Young ladies who date a guy and he starts telling her how to dress, right? Mm-hmm. So even you as a parent, be like, no, you shouldn't be wearing those shorts. You shouldn't be wearing that crop top. And they're still doing it. But then all of a sudden you see the hoodies and you see the long pants, and they're dating someone. That's another sign too of, did he tell you not to dress this way? And even though as a parent, we might think, oh, that's good, because I don't want them showing themselves anyway. But there is something in that person being empowered to go, you know what? If this is how you dress, no one should be telling you
right.
this is how you should dress. Now, if you change it because that's what you want to do and that's the respect, but that's a conversation, right?
Yes.
Mom, I just want to respect what they're saying. Okay, what do you mean by that? Well, maybe I was, so there has to be something.
Yeah, red flags all over that.
Oh, yes. And
yeah, there's red flags. But the thing is, I think for parents, the world has us so busy, it's stopping and slowing down long enough to sit down and have dinner with them, have a conversation with them, check their phones. You don't own anything.
Absolutely.
You pay no bills. Check their phone. Because the truth is, like you said, there's secret apps, there's all kind of stuff that we have no idea about because we're considered old. And so we need to get in their business and find this information out. But parents, be observant. Be present with them. And I love what you said. And I'm going to repeat it a few times. If it's uncomfortable, you're in the right place. Because there's nothing comfortable about these conversations about sex or dating or violence or abuse. But it still needs to be had. Because if you're not talking to your kids about these things, someone else is, right? And so you want to be the voice that they hear, for sure.
Absolutely. The first voice. So it might even start at 8 and 9.
The first voice.
Yeah, 8, 9, and 10, because there are going to be people, usually their peers, who don't have any experience just like them. And maybe they've gotten some really bad advice. And so they're going to learn something. And so truly you being that first voice of everything sex, everything relationship. Don't wait for the schools. We don't see a lot of schools. And I'll say here, I haven't seen many schools talking about sex or contraceptives or safety in that sense, especially now with COVID. That's not, they don't even have, we're not even in school. We haven't been in school since last spring. And so our kids are home. And so there is that conversation for us to do the job. It's actually giving it back to parents. Like, hey, teach your children these things. The school shouldn't be the ones that that takes that ownership.
And don't let someone else raise them or social media tell them how they should be. But I also want to talk to parents who may be currently in an abusive relationship or have left one. What are your thoughts on counseling for kids who have experienced domestic abuse in the home?
Yeah, I think it's actually imperative in some shape or another, even a check-in, if it's a social worker, a counselor, a school counselor, if you have a counseling ministry in your church that, you see who can definitely have these types of conversations. Even if you have a mentor friend that you trust who can talk to your kids if you can't afford counseling or if you don't have the insurance, because sometimes that's the limitation. If you have a family member or a friend who could support, they need to have a place to talk about what they've seen and what they've experienced. And people don't often realize getting that out of your head, because children, they do make, even though it could have been, it's not a great experience but it becomes more catastrophic in their heads. And so they need to be able to talk about it. And then they blame themselves a lot of the time as well. And so they carry all that weight on them. And so it's truly to see what they know, acknowledging it, validating it, and then going, okay, this is what we're going to do moving forward to protect you, to keep you safe.
That's good.
And that's the conversation. And, with kids especially, they just want to hear you're going to keep them safe and you're doing something about it to protect them. And so kids are very resilient and can, I won't say just move on, but what we do, if we give them more safe experience, more healthy experience, those unhealthy things kind of get smaller and smaller and smaller.
That's it. So you're pushing the unhealthy out with more of the healthy.
Yes.
The groups, the opportunities to speak about what happened, because they experienced the abuse with you. So we want to make sure that you don't just get the therapy, the help, the counseling, the advocacy, but they get it as well.
Yes.
When Dating Hurts by Bill Mitchell. I had him on. If you guys want to check out one of the previous videos I did, his daughter, he talks about the signs that parents can look for, because his daughter was killed. She was in college and was killed they'd only met her, I believe, one time.
Wow.
And so it was a brutal, it was just devastating for the entire family. But he wrote a book on it, talks about the devastation of it and the things that parents can look for. So it's simple. So let me just switch over real quick to the emotional abuse that a teenager may experience.
Yeah, that emotional abuse is just really the put downs, telling the person they're not good enough. And in fact, what's a little, crazy about it, and you see it sometimes when there's a woman who's doing well academically, she's an athlete and she gets with possibly, because some of the warning signs of someone where you can end up is someone academically who's doing well, who has good friends, and they start dating someone who, is insecure. And that could be that they're not academically well off themselves, or they can even be an athlete who's insecure. but those put downs, telling that person they're not good enough. And it kind of starts with dismissive behavior, right? Like, oh, I did great on this. Yeah, okay. Instead of being all in with the individual, making it about them, not hearing them out. So it truly does start with these little small things that gradually grow. And we do know any abuse that happens is not absent of emotional abuse. And so,
absolutely.
So it all happens in that way. But the put downs, the dismissive behavior, the manipulation, definitely only talking to you privately, but in public, they don't even acknowledge that you exist.
Yeah. That is so painful for a young person to go through. I'm seeing you in school, you're not talking to me, but I'm good enough to be with behind closed doors or on the phone or via text message. And a young person doesn't know how to emotionally handle something like that. We struggle as adults to handle something like that.
Right.
Imagine much less a child. So those things are really important to look out for. I wanted to touch on like teen dating violence when it comes to the murders and the threats that happen. So I just want to share with parents that are watching. If your child breaks up with the person who like, hey, I don't really want to be with him anymore, give them the space to talk to you about why they broke up, what happened, because oftentimes they may say they may have threatened them. And you would be surprised if you did some research on how many youth are killed by their partners.
Oh yeah.
It's really important to talk to them about what happened at the end.
And the stalking, that thing and showing up to the house, showing up to their sports events, showing up on friends' pages, stuff of that nature. And so we definitely have to take even that stalking and call it stalking. People might often think, oh, it's cute. Oh, he showed up with, it's like, no, I told him don't, or I told her stop coming here. And truly how we've been able to get this across to youth is, I could talk to them all day, try to educate them, but having videos and Love is Respect has videos, Behind the Scene has videos, or Behind the Post, Behind the Post, they have great videos that I've incorporated of teens, these interactions of seeing these things happen. And that's when you kind of see the light bulbs go off when we see these videos. But stalking, they show a young lady walking down the street. I guess she was leaving her job and he comes up behind her and touches her shoulder. And she's like, whoa. And he's like, oh, I just missed you so much. I just had to see you. Yeah. And, and when we grow up in an unhealthy environment, some of us might go, oh, he cares about me. But no, it's like, no, he didn't honor your request. And so that's not okay. Or, hey, I'm
going to stop. So care about you is one thing. Care about you is one thing. Honor your boundary is another. And we even struggle with that as adults. You don't have to follow me to show me that you care about me. You don't have to hit me to show me that you care about me. You don't have to show up where I am to show that you care about me. Respect my boundary.
Yes.
And teaching children that at a young age is very important.
It is.
It's very important, and it can help them in the future.
Absolutely. And even, going back to, we can't dismiss, there's so many things that happen on social media, even there, the many comments or the secret messages. And it's like, no, I said, and they have to block them, and it's like, to me, it's like, you shouldn't have to go to blocking because someone keeps texting or keep not honoring the request that you made, to stop this behavior. And so there's actually a course we're going to be doing in a couple of weeks called How to Break Up Healthy.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Let them know where they can check it out, because we could definitely refer to some teens to do it, because you can, and the other person may not even be healthy. So you have to know how to protect yourself. If you're a young person listening and you're going through that, there is help available. So we're going to make sure you get some of that information toward the end. But I want to share, I was doing another training with some youth one time. And so it was a game, it was a leave or stay. Would you leave or would you stay? And so I asked questions like, they hit you, would you leave or stay? So one of the kids yelled out, well, did they say sorry? I said, yeah, they said sorry. They said they'd stay. And so I said, well, they followed you. And they said, would you leave? And it was the craziest thing. All of the students went to the stay side except for one. And after the partner had done so much abuse to them, at the end, she was the only one that said that she would leave. And then she said, well, I have a question. I said, yes. She goes, did they say they were sorry? And I said, yes. And they said that they would change. And she went to the stay side. So we have to teach her. It was mind blowing to me, but that the youth were so willing to stay in a relationship that was unhealthy, just because the person said sorry.
Right.
Slap, sorry, push, sorry. It was crazy. And another thing that happened was like, we talked about it, and they were like, well, yeah, my boyfriend likes to read my texts first before I read them. Or when I get home, I have to check in with her, and teenage girls, I'm telling you, it is no different, because they're doing the same thing the other way. But it was just shocking to see how the teens are dating these days, and how much, let's talk about that gray area, the abuse versus a healthy or unhealthy relationship, because they're calling it healthy, but it's extremely unhealthy.
Right. And I think that's what it is, because when we say abusive, people go, well, no, that's not abusive. And so it automatically goes to healthy. But that whole gray area is a lot of unhealthy behavior. There's a lot of red flags, in there. And so I think that's where we miss as well, because even working with victims and, trainings I do, even with the military, the first question you'll hear leaders say is, oh, well, did they hit him? Did she hit him? Did he hit her? And it's like, there's a lot between that. You don't have to hit someone to be abusive.
Exactly.
And so we're still trying to educate that whole unhealthy gray area. And it goes into a lot of what we talk about, that emotional abuse and the verbal abuse and the checking my phone, that privacy piece. Like we all, when it comes to relationship, there's privacy. Why do you need to check my phone or have access? What I found is a lot of the young people now have the passwords as part of their relationship. Is you need to have a password to your Instagram and your, all your everything.
It's so funny you say that, because that's true. That came out too. And during the trainings, they're like, oh yeah, they have the password to my Instagram, my Facebook. Why is that necessary? My husband doesn't have my password. I mean, he's never asked for it. It's just not a normal thing. And it just doesn't make any sense unless there's a reason that this person wants to have access to everything you do, everyone that you communicate. And young people, it's not healthy and it's not normal.
It is not. And you know what I've noticed? There are the young people, because I coach at our local high school, and you do see the one of the things we see, and I don't know why this is, because even in doing counseling, I work with teenagers. I've had teenagers say to me, oh, I wish I had so-and-so's parents, right? And I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? They let them do whatever they want. They can stay out all hours of the night. They have boyfriends. They could come to the house. And I hear that. And I'm like, well, tell me about your parents. Well, it's usually the parents who set boundaries, right? And so, and I have a few of the young people I work with, you can tell the dynamics of the healthy family dynamic, but you know what? You might see them alone, right? Because and so think about that. If, my parents are trying to teach me right, how much easier it is to be pulled over on this side because it seems cooler. There's more people over there. And so it's just a really, it's a really hard dynamic, because you have those kids who do have boundaries, and they try to have boundaries and set these standards for themselves, but they often are alone.
Yeah. And I think teaching them that being alone is okay. They don't have to follow the crowd. They don't have to do what everybody else does. Just because Johnny's mom lets him do that doesn't mean that you have to be able to do the same thing. And so I wanted to make sure that we gave some of the safety plan tips to those who may be teenagers who may be experiencing it. One of the things is, I want you to remember that you can't control your boyfriend, girlfriend's behavior. You can't. It's not possible. You can't give enough passwords, do whatever they want physically with them, and to change them. Right. Another boundary line is wanting you to cross physical and sexual boundaries that you don't want to cross. And that's a really big one.
Well, I think one thing we talk about is dating does not equal sex, right? Yeah, and it is not and it's not part of the relationship. It's like automatically, because we're dating, that means we have sex. And it truly is one of those things where a lot of kids get really confused about it. You do have, and I've heard, teens being forced. And I'm like, that's rape, and I didn't want to, but this person felt entitled to have access to my body. And it's like, so when you set those boundaries, it truly is like, well, if those crossing those lines, one, you need to share that with someone you trust, an adult, in your life, right away. But also going, if this person's trying to force me to do this, that's not love. You would never force me to give away something so sacred, or something I myself have said I don't want to do right now. Yeah, and that is not equal love at all. And so,
and that this generation that we're dealing with, sex and sexual acts is a really, really big thing, parents. And if it makes you uncomfortable, that's okay too, because you still need to have the conversation, because the kids are having it.
Yes.
Period. I was watching a show with my husband the other day, and it was like the girl was getting ready to go to high school, and she said she went to get birth control, and she was like, well, the lady was like, well, are you having sex? She was like, no, but it's a prerequisite. Everyone going to high school has it. And it was just like, wait a minute. So she felt as though she had to do this thing because everyone was doing it. Please, we beg, have the conversation with your children.
But I'll tell you what, even about that conversation, don't just say, are you having sex? Because you're finding that a lot of the kids are not having sex. They're doing sexual acts.
Very true.
And so truly, if you leave it just, are you having sex? They'll be like, well, no. But then you might, okay, are you doing other stuff? What are you doing with your hands? What are you doing with your mouth? You know, where are you putting your mouth?
Shannon, it's a very important conversation because this is where the cameras come out. This is where the video comes out. This is where the bribery and the bullying comes out because they have a picture or something like that. It's very, very, very important that you have the conversation with your children because someone else could be having it with them as well. So another thing I want to point out is always remain in public places. If you are afraid of your partner, if you're afraid that you don't like the way they grab you or yell at you, always remain in a public place with them around others in an attempt to minimize the violence, but also in an attempt to keep you surrounded by other people. Be in the lunchroom, be on campus, be in the dorm room with someone so they can see that you're not by yourself.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice.
And parents, if you need to talk, do that with them. That's very true too. Some of them are doing it, not realizing that they're doing some kind of, sexual act. That's why you got to talk to them. Again, if it's uncomfortable, you're in the right place. What's more uncomfortable is to have the conversation afterward, and that can be more painful than anything else. So we want to put boundaries and say nobody has the right to touch your body. No one has the right to physically touch you. No one should be checking your text messages and emails before you have that conversation with them. And listen, parents, they need your support. They don't need anyone to judge them. If you want to create a safe space for your children to come and talk to you, make it safe. I saw you, Shannon. You took a big breath. Say it. Go ahead.
Yeah. Come on. No, it's true. I mean, I cannot remember a time having a conversation with my parents about anything sex, anything boys, anything, because the environment was so traumatic, right? But you truly are. If you leave a teen to learn on their own, it is not going to be a good thing.
It's so dangerous.
And even if they don't want to talk to you, even if your kid storms away, I don't want to talk to you, I don't want to talk to you, just knowing like, hey, you know what, I'm here though, right? And I want to talk to you and I want to be engaged. I want to make sure that you're okay. And so it's just, I think about it myself. I'm like, I do not remember a conversation. I remember just trying to figure it out on my own, and you don't want to do that. So,
and that was how many years ago? We're talking about now, where everything is at the Google, a touch of Google. You do not want Google to teach your child anything.
You do not. They're going to see a lot of stuff too.
Yeah, you don't want them to. Another thing I want to talk about: if your child comes to you and they say that they may be in an abusive relationship, be very careful. And Bill talks about this on the live that we did too, because you don't want to bash the partner. They may love them. They may really care about them. But we want to talk about the behavior, not the person. I think it's important to distinguish the two for their sake, right? Because I can't believe that Johnny, would hit you. Well, so no one should be hitting you. It's not okay for anyone to force you to do these things. And so focusing on the behavior and not the person, because if you bash the person, I knew you never liked him. See, that's why I didn't want to talk to you about her, because we're always talking. You don't even like her, and they shut you off. So address the behavior and not the person. And
it's exactly the same we see in adults. How many times does it take for a person to leave an abusive partner? So think about this. They're coming to you today, right? And if you start bashing that person, but yet next week they're back together with that individual because they said they were sorry, then what you just did was close the door again, right? And, so it is focused on the behavior is the best thing to do and not the person, because they could end up back with that individual and you don't want to close that door.
And I think too, once you put the seed of the behavior in their mind versus anti-person, like you said, as myself as a survivor, I didn't want to tell you because I loved my husband. And if I tell you, you're going to tell me that I should leave him. Right. You know what I mean? So it's really important that the behavior is talked about, and not so much no one should be hitting you. No one should be locking you up in a room. No one should be controlling the way you go and what you say. You do know that, right, Lisa? So having the conversation about the behavior, not the person, especially for a young person.
Oh, yeah.
Is really important.
Very important.
And so last but not least, before we let her go, would be to kind of focus on support system and solutions for them. What, because there are support systems available, there are resources available, and I don't want anyone to minimize the dangers of teen dating violence versus adult dating violence. The danger can be equally the same. Young people are they're still growing in their early teen, like late teens, early 20s. Their hormones are rushing. And so we've seen, I mean, even if you look it up, the statistics of how many kill their partner. So don't think just because they're a young person they'll move on, they'll get over it.
Yeah. I think one thing I wanted to touch on, and we can go into that, is truly encouraging and speaking life into that child, right? Because if you're telling them about their purpose and their worth, and especially, and I just can't minimize a dad talking to their daughter about their purpose and worth, and a dad talking to their son, because we as women, you know, I get it. You know, as a mom, me as a mom, we expect you to say that. But when a dad comes into the picture, or a male role model in the family dynamic comes in and tells a young lady what your worth is, it changes everything. And so, you know, we're speaking to you men too, who are out there, be that voice, speak up on this, have that and I say, if a young lady has a good bond, and it's not 100% because people still have choices, right? But have that good bond with their father and set that standard of what their worth is based off what he has put, you know, in her life and encouraged. That truly limits down a lot of the times. And I won't say, like we say, we don't say 100% because there are still good fathers whose kids do these things, but definitely speaking life into that young person and reminding them consistently of their worth.
That's good. Value. That's so important. Yeah, because the opposite happens in an abusive relationship. They're not talking about
absolutely.
They're talking about everything that you're not.
Yes.
And so that's really important. And I think even teach your children, girls, don't hit on boys. You know, there's this saying that came out more recently. You know, he'll hit her on the playground. A little boy will hit a little girl on the playground because that means he likes her. You know, it's like, stop teaching girls that a boy will hit you if he likes you. That's foolishness. Honestly, it's ludicrous. It's just not true.
Right. Absolutely.
You don't hit someone because you like them. And so teach young women, because I see young women slapping their boyfriends, grabbing them. It's highly inappropriate. Teach them to keep their daggone hands to themselves, because that's the beginning of, let me tell you, you know how many abusive relationships, and I'm going to say it, have started too with young people, especially because the woman started hitting first. Oh yeah. And then it turned into the opposite. Like it turned into the opposite.
Absolutely. And, you know, even that's a good thing too. I'm glad you brought it up because, you know, as we talk about these things in teen dating violence, the focus can be on a lot of young women, but empowering young men too, to say, hey, don't put your hands on me, or, you know, don't sit on me, don't grab on me. And I've seen it because I'm at the high schools, and the guy, he's so uncomfortable, and the girl's grabbing on him, and he's just like, and it's like, no, use your words. Teach them to use their words. Like, don't put your hands on me. Don't do that. Don't grab on me. And so I'm glad you did bring that up about, you know, the young ladies too, teaching everyone the boundaries.
They're not exempt from it. You know, kids stay in kids' places. No, these kids, these are grown children that are walking around this earth. So we need to make sure that we educate them. Someone just shared a story of how she saw someone get off the school bus, a young man grab and smack their girlfriend as they got off the school bus. And she didn't do anything to him. You know, so it's important. That's not normal behavior. Set boundaries, and we need to teach our children how to do the same. But again, just like Stand Up Survivor focuses on awareness. Right. Teaching the children teaching the young people that it's not normal. Right. You know, and once we establish that, we educate them on what healthy looks like and what unhealthy is, and what boundary lines to put up. And I think it starts at home. I'm telling you, it starts at home by the relationships that we have to give examples to our children. We have to show them what a healthy relationship looks like. That's first and foremost. But like for myself, I had to leave my relationship, so my children were just with me. So it's my job to teach them what boundaries looks like. And I would encourage you to do the same. Ladies and gentlemen that are watching, teach them to have boundaries. Don't touch me like that. Don't talk to me like that.
Right. And role play in the home with your kids. You know, people might think it's funny. I always say when things are weird and funny, that's the best time to do it. And like I said, it starts young, because I've even walked up to my son and I'm like, if a girl said this to you, what would you say? Right. Or if someone did this, even bullying or certain behaviors, it doesn't even have to be relational. You know, if someone did this, what would you say? If a teacher did this or said this to you, what would you say? Because, you know, my son, you know, kind of different, brought up a situation where he felt his teacher was speaking a little racist on a topic. And I was like, well, how do you know? And so things like that, he's already been prepared on conversations or how. And so you don't want them to have to figure it out in that moment. We know
Okay,
there
I
are
see what you're
certain
saying.
things
That's
with
good.
teenagers, right, that we know are going to happen. Even if they themselves are not in a dating relationship, their friends are, right?
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
absolutely.
right, and they're around it. So do you have a voice in that? Hey, that's not okay that you said that to her. Or hey, you guys, seriously? Or bring your friend, like, why is she putting her hand in your face? Have we empowered kids to speak up when things are wrong? Are they, but because it's not specific to them, just be quiet. And so role play, talk to your kids, give them different, ideas, scenarios, scenarios about different events, and that will help them. So when it comes up, they're like, I've heard this somewhere, because usually they'll forget you told them,
Yeah, but I like that idea. I think I'm even trying to let me role play. What would you do in this situation? And sometimes they hush me and push me aside, but it doesn't matter. Like someone just said, have the conversation with them anyway. They don't have to be comfortable. I love what you talked about. If it's uncomfortable, you're in the right place. You're having the right conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much, Shannon, for joining us. I appreciate it. Can you tell us real quick where they can find you? I didn't. Okay, what's your website?
So my website is legacylifecounseling-morel.org. So I can actually write it in the comments, or I can send it to you.
I'm putting it up right now.
Okay.
Legacy Life Counseling-Morel what?
.org.
.org. Okay.
Right. And so
I know that you have something going on coming up for teen dating, which is really, really important. So can they find that information there?
Yes, they can. So tomorrow night, actually, we have our parent forum. Last week, we had our teen dating violence awareness night. We had 68 teenagers who showed up to that. So that was pretty awesome, and the impact. And when I asked the question, how many of you have heard of who's been, only one teenager raised their hand that someone had spoke to them about teen dating violence out of 68.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my goodness. So just one.
Wow.
And so, yeah. So tomorrow night, we have the parents. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so when people look at us like the statistics are outrageous, I mean, that gives you one right there. 1 out of 60, what? 1 or 68 kids?
68 had heard of
just
anything.
One.
Did you know it was teen dating violence awareness? Then when I asked them about it, they because you post about it all the time.
Oh my gosh. But not that somebody has spoken to them. Yeah.
Right.
So finish what you were saying, and then I'm going to put that.
And so tomorrow evening we have the parent forum. And so I'm just walking them through really being that resource for the teenagers, what to look for, how to keep that open window for teenagers. Some of them will be coaches, some of them parents, some of them are parents, some of them are youth pastors. And truly my heart is we need to have these conversations in churches, ministries, because a lot of kids come out to these types of environments in our communities. And our athletes, you're around them a lot of time. Coaches are major influences to our athletes. So think about if you have those tools and the understanding of what's going on, you might be the first person they talk to. So we're going to be educating parents. And this is in person. We are about to offer, and we're trying to move it not just in February, because it is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month.
All year.
Seriously. All year long. So we're going to have different forums and different setups, Zoom, ways to do it online. Awesome. So we were just getting that momentum moving right now. So
awesome. So you guys check her out at legacylifecounseling-morel.org. And I just want to put out a final challenge to the parents. I want to challenge you to have the conversation with your children. Mm-hmm. I understand it may be uncomfortable. I understand that it may not be something you necessarily will talk to yourself, but I would encourage you to have the conversation. Mm-hmm. Don't let it be after they experience abuse. Right. To have the conversation. And if you are a survivor and your children have seen the abuse, have a conversation with them, connect them with a counselor, just like Shannon, that can help walk them through what that looks like. Absolutely. All right, you guys, I'll see you later. Have a good day. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yes.
Yeah, Shannon, please hang out. Don't go anywhere.
Okay.
Bye.